Hello. Today we're starting a series on Jupiter and the signs. Jupiter is usually described as luck, growth, expansion, and abundance. That's true, but it doesn't go far enough. In a chart, Jupiter shows how you grow beyond your current limits. It describes your instinct for expansion, your relationship to possibility, your beliefs about what life can offer you, and the way you move toward meaning, opportunity, and experience. It also shows how you handle increase, how you respond when life opens up, and how comfortable you are with taking up more space. This is why Jupiter is not only about luck. It's about perspective. It's about belief. It's about what you trust, what you expect, and what you think is possible for you. Two people can be given the same opening and respond in completely different ways. One leans in immediately and sees potential. Another hesitates, doubts it, or assumes it won't lead anywhere. That difference is not random. Jupiter explains it. The sign Jupiter is in shows how that expansion happens. It changes the tone, the direction, and the way growth expresses itself. Some Jupiter placements grow through action and risk. Others grow through patience and consistency. Some expand through knowledge, others through faith, others through relationships, others through testing limits and gaining direct experience. The same applies to success, confidence, and opportunity. Jupiter describes what you naturally place your faith in, where you tend to expect more, and where you may either overreach or hold yourself back. It often shows where life wants to open for you, and where excess, exaggeration, or misplaced confidence can create problems if the placement is not understood clearly. In the natal chart, the sign gives the style, the house shows the area of life, and the aspects modify how easily, strongly, or unevenly Jupiter operates. So this series focuses on the sign first. We're going to look at how Jupiter behaves in each sign, how it seeks growth, what it trusts, what it amplifies, and where it tends to create both opportunity and imbalance when it isn't handled consciously. No cliches, no flattened meanings, no easy one-word definitions, just how the placement actually works. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and book a consultation with me if you want to understand exactly how this placement affects your personal chart. Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter in Taurus grows through stability, patience, and the steady development of what has real value. This is a placement that does not need constant motion to feel alive. It settles. It builds. It strengthens what already has substance. Because Taurus is not concerned with speed for its own sake. It is concerned with what lasts. And when Jupiter is here, growth comes from taking something promising and giving it enough time, care, and consistency to become solid. Not rushing toward the next thing. Not scattering energy across too many directions. Staying, developing, finding out what becomes possible when you do not abandon something the moment it stops being new. There's a natural instinct here to move more deliberately, but not necessarily more passively. More selectively, something appears, and the question is not just whether it is exciting. The question is whether it is worth investing in. A path opens, and the reaction is often to assess whether it can actually support life in a meaningful way. A possibility emerges, and the person tends to ask whether it has quality, substance, and staying power. This creates a different kind of momentum. And momentum is still important here, but it is slower, steadier, and more cumulative. Because Jupiter in Taurus often learns by staying with something long enough to see what it becomes, not by jumping quickly from one experience to the next. This is one of its defining characteristics. Understanding comes through continuity. Clarity comes after enough time has passed to reveal what is real. Confidence builds through consistency, not through urgency. That can make this placement grounded, sometimes even unshakable. But more accurately, it is comfortable letting things unfold at a natural pace. And that opens doors. Opportunities tend to appear when the person has already built something strong enough to receive them. Not when they are constantly restarting. Not when they are disrupting their own progress every few weeks. When they are established. When they are invested. When they are willing to stay present long enough for growth to mature. This can create a life pattern where progress happens gradually, quietly, reliably, Because consistency creates value. Value creates support. And support leads to expansion. Now, one of the strengths of Jupiter in Taurus is its ability to generate stability. Not just appreciate it, generate it. It does not always need chaos, novelty, or pressure to stay engaged. It can create its own sense of continuity, its own rhythm, its own security. That makes it dependable in a very specific way. Not rigid, but rooted. It does not require dramatic conditions to keep moving. It creates development even when the pace is slow. And that is powerful, because many opportunities in life do not come from dramatic leaps. They come from staying with something long enough for it to deepen, for it to gain value, for it to become trustworthy. Jupiter in Taurus does that naturally. It stays, it cultivates, it builds, and through that, it often finds itself in a stronger position simply because it did not walk away too early. There is usually a strong belief here in material and emotional substance, a sense that if something is worth having, it is worth building properly. And very often, that means refusing to rush the process. This placement does not naturally assume that life should be approached through constant reinvention. It tends to believe that reality responds to steadiness, to commitment, to repetition, to care. And that worldview can create a very strong relationship with sustainability. You do not sit around waiting for life to become valuable. You create value by investing in what matters. You do not chase every possible option. You develop the right one. That is very Taurus. And with Jupiter here, that instinct becomes larger, stronger, and more central to the life path. Now, this is part of why Jupiter in Taurus can seem lucky. From the outside, people may say things like, things always come together for them, or they always seem secure. But a lot of that so-called luck comes from steadiness, from not burning through resources impulsively, from choosing carefully, from allowing results to compound instead of disrupting them every time boredom appears. That matters, because many people lose opportunities not because those opportunities never existed, but because impatience kept them from staying with the process long enough to benefit from it. Jupiter in Taurus often avoids that problem, not because it always knows the future, but because it is willing to let growth become tangible before abandoning it. And sometimes that alone creates advantage. This placement also tends to have a strong relationship to comfort, not in the shallow sense of luxury alone, more in the sense that life works better when it is livable. A situation becomes appealing when it has real substance. A goal becomes meaningful when it produces something stable. A path becomes worthwhile when it can support the body, the nervous system, the day-to-day reality of life. This is one of the reasons Jupiter in Taurus can become highly motivated when there is something lasting to build. It likes creating security. It likes strengthening what is useful. It likes the feeling of knowing that effort has turned into something real, of turning possibility into form, of making life more solid rather than more uncertain. But this is also where imbalance can appear, because when stability becomes the default priority, movement can be delayed. Decisions can become too cautious. Preference for what is known can override openness to what is new. The desire to protect what has already been built can become resistance to necessary change. So one of the key lessons here is learning the difference between stability and stagnation, because they are not the same. Stability creates support. Stagnation creates heaviness. Stability has life in it. Stagnation is often just fear wearing the face of calm. And Jupiter in Taurus becomes far more effective when it knows when to preserve what matters and when to move before comfort turns into limitation. That awareness matters, not because it should become reckless in a way that kills its natural strength, but because a little flexibility can make all that steadiness much more fruitful. This placement does not need less grounding. It needs living grounding. Grounding that allows growth. Grounding that can adapt. Support that knows how to evolve. Otherwise, life can become a series of long commitments that no longer inspire real development. A series of safe choices that stop being expansive. A series of structures kept in place long after they have served their purpose. That can happen here, because Taurus loves continuity. The familiar has peace in it. The known has peace in it. The established has peace in it, but staying with something after it has stopped growing can become just as limiting as leaving too soon. So one important part of maturity with Jupiter and Taurus is learning that change does not always threaten security. Sometimes it protects it. Sometimes it renews it. Sometimes it is the only thing that keeps life from quietly hardening into something too small. Now, in terms of belief, this placement tends to trust what is proven. It believes that what is real will reveal itself over time. That consistency tells the truth. That talk means very little if nothing concrete comes of it. There is often a strong sense that life responds to people who know how to build patiently. And that belief can be very grounding. It creates endurance, because even when something takes time, the response is not usually to panic. It is to continue, to strengthen, to keep showing up. Difficulty here is often seen as part of the process, not proof that the process should be abandoned. And that keeps development steady. There is often a refusal to throw everything away too quickly, a refusal to confuse temporary discomfort with total failure. The person may become frustrated, discouraged, or tired, but those states often turn back into persistence rather than collapse. That is one of the hidden strengths of this placement. It restores confidence by seeing results accumulate. It rebuilds faith by returning to what is real, not necessarily by making bold declarations. Steadiness itself becomes part of the strengthening process, but this can also create a shadow pattern. Because if continuity is always the answer, the person may avoid changing course long after a situation has stopped being worth the investment. They may confuse loyalty with wisdom. They may replace discernment with attachment. And eventually, that can create repetition. The same comfort becoming confinement. The same habit becoming identity. The same kind of choice appearing again because it was maintained, but not deeply reconsidered. So growth also involves learning that commitment is most effective when it is alive, not just long-lasting. The lesson is not stop building. The lesson is build what truly deserves your time. Now, another important aspect of Jupiter in Taurus is how it relates to resources. This placement usually prefers stability in money, space, routine, and physical reality. The ability to rely on something, to trust what is available, to build without constant disruption. That does not mean it cannot handle risk. It can, but it tends to function best when risk is measured, when value is clear, when there is some sense that what is being pursued can actually support the life being lived. In environments where that is possible, it can thrive. It can create. It can accumulate. It can turn effort into lasting strength. But in environments that are too unstable, too chaotic, or too disconnected from practical value, stress can build. Because this placement is not designed to live in constant volatility. It is designed to establish. There's usually very little love here for waste, inconsistency, or people who treat every decision like a temporary experiment with no real consequences. That kind of atmosphere can make Jupiter in Taurus feel ungrounded, not because it cannot handle uncertainty at all, but because uncertainty without purpose feels draining to it. It needs some sense of continuity, some ability to build, some evidence that energy is being placed somewhere meaningful. Without that, motivation can decline very quickly. In work, Jupiter in Taurus often does well in roles that involve value, development, or tangible results. Finance, business, design, beauty, food, land, art that becomes materially viable. Anything where quality, patience, and steady effort actually matter. Fields where care increases worth often suit this placement well. Even within changing environments, it tends to gravitate toward positions where it can build something dependable, improve something over time, or create a stronger material foundation. Because instability is one of the few things that truly weakens this placement. Not lack of intelligence, not lack of opportunity, instability. Now, another layer here has to do with self-worth. Jupiter in Taurus often gives the person a strong instinct to value what is real. But that relationship to value is not always simple. Sometimes it comes out as good taste. Sometimes it comes out as protectiveness. Sometimes it comes out as, I know what is worth my time. And surprisingly often that works. But self-worth here becomes much more powerful when it is not dependent only on security or possession. Because there is a difference between value and attachment. Value says this matters. Attachment says, I cannot let this change. Value says, I deserve what is nourishing. Attachment says, if I lose this, I lose myself. That distinction matters because Jupiter amplifies. And in Taurus, it can amplify groundedness, but it can also amplify overattachment. The person may over-identify with comfort. They may assume that what feels safe is automatically right. They may stay so loyal to what has worked before that they miss what is trying to grow next. This is especially important in moments where change would restore vitality, where movement would protect future stability, or where letting go would actually create more space for abundance. So one of the deeper tasks of this placement is learning how to keep its natural steadiness while becoming more open to renewal. Not less grounded, not less loyal, just more responsive to reality. Now, in relationships, this placement tends to value consistency, trust, loyalty. It prefers connections that feel dependable rather than erratic. There is often a desire for a connection that feels embodied, comforting, present, something that can be relied on, rather than something that stays abstract or emotionally unstable. It often appreciates people who mean what they say, who show care through action, who do not create chaos where calm is possible. That can make this placement beautiful in connection. Steady, warm, committed in a way that feels reassuring. But here again, balance matters, because the same loyalty that creates safety can sometimes come across as possessiveness or as resistance to growth. Not every relationship should remain exactly as it began. Not every bond stays healthy just because it has history. So part of growth here is learning how to maintain that natural devotion while also recognizing when change is necessary inside the relationship. Not becoming detached, but remaining awake. That is a major maturity point. Learning that trust is strongest when it is paired with openness. Otherwise, the person may hold too tightly, stay too long, or protect the form of the relationship after its vitality has already begun to fade. There can also be a strong attraction here to comfort, beauty, physical presence, and emotional consistency in relationships. Something has to feel real. There often needs to be steadiness, not endless emotional turbulence, not relational chaos mistaken for passion, not a bond that keeps threatening collapse every time something becomes difficult. Jupiter in Taurus usually wants relationship to feel like something can actually be built. That can be beautiful when it creates security, trust, and genuine emotional depth over time. But it can become limiting if the person starts confusing peace with compatibility, or if they stay invested the moment something becomes familiar even when it no longer supports growth. So once again, the lesson returns. Not every meaningful thing remains healthy simply because it lasts. Some things deserve to continue because they are alive. Some things only continue because no one wants to disturb them, and the person has to learn how to know the difference. Now, one of the deeper themes with Jupiter in Taurus is value, because Taurus is connected to resources, to worth, to what is cultivated and held. And when Jupiter is here, growth is closely tied to becoming more conscious of what truly deserves investment, not what is merely attractive in the moment, not what promises quick comfort. What actually nourishes life? What actually strengthens it? What actually creates more stability, more substance, more peace? This can be incredibly empowering because it places the source of expansion in the person's ability to choose wisely and stay with what matters, not outside. But it also requires responsibility because when you are the one investing, you are also the one shaping what grows. This placement often learns that abundance is not just the ability to have more. It is also the ability to sustain what is good. And that is where maturity deepens the placement. Because early on, Jupiter in Taurus can believe that security means keeping everything stable, everything familiar, everything protected from disruption. Later, it often learns that real abundance includes flow. It includes renewal. It includes knowing what to keep and what to release. It includes choosing quality over mere continuity. This is where the placement becomes much more powerful, because then stability is no longer fear-based. It is conscious, and conscious stability changes everything. At its highest expression, Jupiter in Taurus does not just hold on randomly. It becomes fertile. It becomes patient in a way that allows things to ripen fully. It becomes the energy that turns small beginnings into lasting value. The person who builds slowly and ends up with something real. The one who strengthens what others treat carelessly. The one who proves that lasting success often comes from calm persistence rather than dramatic force. That is one of the gifts here. It can restore groundedness where life has become too scattered. It can restore value where people have become careless. It can cut through waste, hurry, and false urgency. It can remind people that sometimes the answer is not hidden in more speed. Sometimes the answer is in deeper investment. There is something deeply life-supporting about that. Because Taurus trusts cultivation. It trusts what happens when something is given enough time to take root. It trusts that reality reveals its worth to those who remain present with it. And Jupiter here enlarges that trust. The person may become someone who builds not only for themselves, but for others. Someone who models what it looks like to create security without panic. Someone who grows by committing rather than constantly restarting. That can make this placement highly stabilizing when it is mature. Not because it avoids change forever, but because it knows how to create lasting value in a world that often rushes past it. At its best, Jupiter in Taurus creates expansion through patience, steadiness, and a willingness to build life in a way that can actually hold what it receives. It opens paths by investing in them. It creates opportunities by developing them. It builds confidence by staying, not by rushing. And when this placement is working well, it does not just move slowly. It moves with substance. It turns consistency into strength, value into support, and stability into something that actually creates abundance instead of fear. It learns that patience is strongest when it is conscious, that loyalty is most effective when it is alive, and that the life it wants is rarely going to arrive through force alone. It will arrive because it built it carefully enough to last. And that is where its real strength comes from. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and book a consultation with me if you want to understand exactly how Jupiter in your chart is affecting you personally.